Hello, good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Erudition Network Interactive Black History and Knowledge Session. And because people are asking me to do this, I am going to say today is October 13th, 2022. This is our episode for today. You will notice that I kind of went back a little old school. No backdrop right now. None of those things. Little visuals that we've had on here. Now, just wanted to change it up today, make it a little bit easier. Last week we had so many connection problems on my first episode getting back, and I didn't want to run into that problem again today. I wanted to make sure that we were able to do a show or a session that actually was effective and actually, helped everyone. So I'm going to give it a couple of minutes. We started about 5 or 6 minutes later than we usually do, but get a couple of minutes for people to get in and come on. And high elbow cough. It's disgusting. But I'm glad that you're here, sweetie. But yeah, we all, as we said last week, we weren't on for a couple of weeks because of COVID. And I will tell you, I don't want to get into a long thing about COVID, but it was an experience that I did not enjoy, and I don't hope to repeat anytime too soon. But I'm glad that my entire family, my wife and my kids, we all made it through it, and we're still here. And I know a lot of people in the beginning of this whole pandemic thing that we've gone through did not make it, and so I count that a blessing that we were able to all get through it without any complications. So, we have to give God the glory and the grace for that. Sean Anthony, I see that you're in here too. Good to see you. Thank you for coming in. Here's the thing. Because we were gone for those few weeks, it's hard, right? Because, we know that people watch the programs here. Trying to get back into the feel and the move and the sync of everything that goes on with it. It's a little weird, right? It's a little strange trying to get that done, but I am happy that we seem to be doing that and getting back to that. All right, I gave a little time for folks to get in here. Rather come in through YouTube or through Facebook to join us. But I want to get into this thing that we're dealing with here. We're obviously having some societal issues. And this, America is one part of it, but we are seeing it everywhere. And one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is just how bad it has gotten. It has gotten very, very bad. People are out here spouting off incorrect history. People are out here blocking history, telling people to avoid some historical books and understanding, actually blackballing some books from schools throughout the country. And what we're seeing is a fight for knowledge, a fight for understanding. It is so bad. It is so bad that, you know, it is in our popular culture. We have people out here, and yes, I'm speaking of the Kanye Wests and the different people who are out here ascribing to a train or frame of thought that is not reality. That is not reality. If you do not know what I'm talking about, there are pictures that came out last week with Kanye West, and I don't want to give him too much time on this program, but there were pictures came out last week with Kanye West walking out at his fashion show or whatever, wearing a White Lives Matter t-shirt and walking out here with Candace Owens and trying to supplant the narrative, right, of Black Lives Matter, because he believes that Black Lives Matter is detrimental to America, but a shirt that says White Lives Matter is absolutely fine. The logic of that escapes me, because if one is wrong in your mind, then how is the other not wrong? And if the idea is that White Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter is so offensive, because you will remember that when when Black Lives Matter first started to make a national presence, you will remember that people got very angry, very, very angry, and even called it racist. White folks in the media said that that was the most racist thing that they had ever heard. In the media, where our media has shown Black men and women getting attacked by dogs, they have shown Black men and women being spit on, thrown down in the dirt. And I'm not talking about the 50s or the 60s. I'm talking about within the last month. But to fix your mouth to say that Black Lives Matter is the most racist thing you've ever seen on television or in media is a fallacy, a fiction, a lie. But this gentleman went out here with Candace Owens, and they perpetrated this lie, and they showcased this lie to the world. And I asked at the time, as I ask right now, where are all the All Lives Matter people? Do you remember we had this whole situation where people were saying all lives matter? They got mad. They said that would be a shirt, that'd be an organization. But they didn't get so mad, at least on the white side and in some parts of the media. They celebrated it. They condoned it. I pulled the video up, and I don't know if it'll play, because, you know, you try to do these things on some of these, try to get it through. But I'm going to try to play a clip. It's not a very long clip of Candace Owens, right? Because Candace Owens did an interview with Tucker Carlson. Kanye West did too. But I found something that Candace Owens said to be so disturbing. So disturbing. So I'm going to try to get that for you. Give me a moment. All right. And I'm going to see if this will play. I hope it does, because I think we really need to have this conversation. So Candace Owens got on Tucker Carlson's show, and she made some comments, right, about why it was so important to showcase White Lives Matter as a T-shirt. Why it was so important to make the point that, you know, there should be nothing wrong with celebrating white lives in a country where historically we have celebrated white lives over black lives, over people of all colors that weren't white, yellow, brown, red. And it's lunacy, but this is what is being preached to folks out here who have a replacement theory mentality, who believe that any sharing of history outside of the American Revolution, the Civil War, is not true history. People who will celebrate England, France, and any European power, but rarely partakes in teaching anything about Africa, India, what they call now the Middle East, Asia. As much as they talk about Asian Americans being so intelligent, many of them could not tell you the difference between Chinese, Japanese, and many of them don't care. And when confronted by these people who, because this is how the message is being sent. When confronted by people from other cultures, they are often caught on camera saying, go back to your own country, as if they themselves have been in America for forever. Sean Anthony. True, many of the pages history books talk about the past presidents as well as people who made inventions, but at the same time, we only get 1 month of Black history. Sean Anthony, that is true. We get 1 month of Black history, but we get on here every Thursday, you know, barring illness, and we teach. And very often on the live sessions where we want interaction like what you just did, and I really thank you, we don't get it. We don't get it. I pray very hard that people share and that we can get into these discussions. On the times in which we've had people here to talk about our history, we've had a great hour that has explored and people get things from it. But I'm not Fox News. I'm not CNN. I'm not MSNBC. And if you're a network watcher, I'm not TYT. I'm not the Turks. I'm not any of those people. I'm simply here to try to teach you history clearly and to provide you what you need to learn it outside of 1 month in February. It's a great comment, my son. I really appreciate that. But let's get back into this Kanye West thing. I really want us to, I'm going to trying to share that because, you know, when Candace Owens got on this show and she made this comment, I was like, whoa, right? This is what we're doing. And I'm going to try to play this because I really think that we need to understand this. Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm on here thinking that you all can hear this. You can't. All right. So let me do this. I'm gonna take my thing out here, and I'm gonna do this. All right, because I want you to hear this, and I apologize. I'm sitting there thinking, man, you're hearing this. They were totally fine when Asian Lives Matter became a slogan as well. Asians, by the way, are doing better in this country economically than white Americans. They're more successful in education as well, and they're more likely to get credit cards, as just one example. And yet, despite all of that, it was okay to say Asian Lives Matter. We put on a T-shirt to actually do something that was inclusive, to say, actually, white Americans, you are allowed to be a part of this too, because literally all lives matter. And in fact, no lives have been mattering. Black Americans are suffering as a result because of Black Lives Matter. We know that their neighborhoods have been rioted in inner city communities, and the businesses are moving out of there. The result of Black Lives Matter has been white supremacy, assuming that Black Americans were stupid and emotional and would loot and riot their own communities to fulfill a false narrative about policing. And so we got to say all of that by wearing one T-shirt.
It's just so interesting. I mean, if you're triggered, as they say, by a shirt like that, no one who was mad about it ever seemed to ask, like, why? What if it said Malaysian Lives Matter or anybody?
I'm not going to go further into that lunacy, because here's the thing. Here's the thing. When the shirts came out and when the people marched and said Black Lives Matter, white people in the media, particularly on Fox, where he said, why is everybody so upset with White Lives Matter? Particularly those people, right? They got mad. They got really, really mad. They went out and called these people a hate group. And now they're trying to say, well, we could say White Lives Matter, and that's fine. And there's no hate with that, because that's acceptable. And then they put a black face to that lunacy. And it goes into what I know we had such a hard broadcast last week, but it goes into that whole idea, right, of how people lie, and propaganda is not something understood in the Black community. Look at Tucker Carlson's face. He can't even contain his joy of her sitting on here talking crazy. He can't even, he is so happy to have someone who would spill or state a narrative that goes along with what he wants to hear. This is what we're fighting against. This is why we do this show. Do any of you remember when Candace Owens stood in front of white nationalists, racist? She stood in front of racists and said that Hitler was okay in what he did until he tried to take it out of his own country. And how she found that nationalism wasn't a bad thing. These folks who are out here are advocating foolishness. Foolishness. And we have to protect ourselves against that foolishness. Because see, the joy is, there's great joy for people who want to push it and want it to be seen. We sit here on Thursdays with this idea of challenging you, of all backgrounds, cultures, and whatever, to learn some history, to protect yourself from the great lies that you hear. It's sad. It's so sad. And unfortunately, unfortunately, it goes unchecked because there are very few people who have steeped themselves in their own history, the African American community, who can challenge and just tell you that things that are being said about our history are completely ludicrous. The things that are being said about our culture, like she made a comment in that interview, and you're welcome to go pull it back up on YouTube, that Black people were suffering from racism because of groups like Black Lives Matter who tell them that their lives matter. And that this angers whites, so that causes racism. How loony is that idea? That completely removes the last 400 years of history from this very continent, even before it was a country. This is not about racism and the fact that we want you to harden yourself to white thought. No, we want you to be logical, to understand that there is a place for everybody to live in this country and to understand each other culturally without lies. Without lies. I don't know what more many of us can do, because we are giving the time. We're giving you the time. But in the end of the day, she has Fox News. She's appeared on other news networks. And these folks get so much coverage to spit lies, bull. And yet, many of us, when given the opportunity to learn something, we turn it down. And that is what bothers me the most. That is why I keep doing what I'm doing. Because we have to get better. We have to arm ourselves with knowledge. We have to study to show ourselves approved so that we can be workmen and making this thing right. But they tell us these fallacies, this sophistry, this foolishness, because many of us are not armed or ready to deal with it. We're not. And we're ignoring the very tools and things out here that could help us to grow, to be better. I pray every time that I do a show, I pray that people watch, that people learn. And I do that because I know that I'm giving you something here that you need. I sat here last week and I talked about erudition, the need to be erudite. I talked about it at length because I find myself in a battle to teach us to be this way. You know, maybe you didn't hear it, and for those who weren't here, but what I learned was that we are so much focused on a woke society. We're so much focused on what we think is a woke society. Let me show you something here. Because we think that woke is just a word. Woke is just a word. Look at this picture. You will see these two people walking out here. And what keys with me in this picture is the Black woman to the left who's working on the clothes. I want you to make a look to your left. See Candace Owens looking at Kanye West and she's laughing because she really feels that this is so important and that this is going to get her money and to get her exposure. And to the left over here, is a black woman who is looking like, wow, is this what we're doing? Why are these black people, these African Americans, more importantly, who are children of those who were enslaved, so happy to mark themselves in this way? It's sad. It's really sad. But that's where we are. That's where we are. You know, I have spent great time and effort in teaching. Another video I want you to see too. I was going to put this video in at another time, but this video needs to be seen too. We just had a major storm down in Florida, and the governor of Florida, DeSantis, got on television making some very crazy statements. And I pulled the video because I was like, whoa, is this guy for real? Right? Is this guy for real? And what he's doing? Because DeSantis stood up in front of people and basically tried to rewrite history. This is the same governor who was down in Florida trying to fight what he called CRT, or woke schools, and was having history pulled out of books. He was having history basically revisioned in Florida. And he sat here and he made these crazy statements about history. And I'm going to pull this up because I think you really need to be seeing this, whether you watch the replay or whatever. Give me a moment. But I guess my focus tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that we're running into a world where these folks feel that they can rewrite history in whatever way they want to. And they don't care how you feel about it. All right. And I'm going to put this here and I'm going to share this because we really need, and I wish more people were actually on the live session tonight, because we need to talk about this. So I'm going to ask you, if you're not on the live, because I know it's Thursday, I know we want to watch football, and everybody's getting ready for their Thursday night football. But do me a favor. After you've watched your football, after you've enjoyed your day, and you come back and you watch the replay of this, leave a comment. I heard Tina say on our show Monday, leave a comment. Talk to us. Even if you're not on a live session, still interact. Let us know what you think. Let us know how you feel. All right. I'm not going to make the mistake this time. I'm going to make sure that you can hear it. But I want you to listen to what DeSantis had to say about history, particularly in the guise of African Americans.
In school, just this week, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis addressed his, quote, Stop Woke Act, which restricts race-based conversations in businesses and in school, and offered this up.
It was the American Revolution that caused people to question slavery. No one had questioned it before we decided as Americans that we are endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights and that we are all created equal. Then that birthed abolition movements. So you can't teach history that's being used to pursue an ideological agenda.
Back with me, Van Jones, David Swerdlick, and
It's unfortunate. This is what we're teaching. This is what he wants taught to the kids, African American, brown kids in Florida. In Florida, where if you've watched Erudition, if you've learned anything from the Erudition Interactive, in Florida, where we had the indigenous people living with whites and runaway slaves to create a culture, a tricultural nation. And he thinks that nobody cared or brought up about slavery until Americans. Those same Americans, like Andrew Jackson, who blew up Negro Fort in Florida, who kicked off the Seminole Wars simply because they did not want blacks to have a place to live free, because they felt that it would endanger them from living as slave owners, because they knew that these people were living the way that they were. It's a sad situation. Hey, Matthew, I'm glad you're here. All my kids get on Erudition, and they're taught this history. We teach them. And yet, here we are. Here we are listening and seeing a governor of a state tell you that and lie to our children after he's suppressed the actual history and knowledge and information that could help, that happened in his very state. And then to make the idea that it was Americans speaking about it that caused for slavery to end and abolition, it takes away from the whole idea of black plight that happened after the Civil War. It takes away from Rosewood. It takes away from those lynchings that happened in all states across the Union. It takes away from the idea that we're going to teach people that it was okay because white people decided it should stop. And that's not even historically true on any level. But he stood there and he said it in confidence because he understood that all of the people who were going to watch him stand up there as governor, who hadn't read a book, who don't know their history, right? They're going to follow this. They're going to make people do things. Let's get to another part of that video that they showed. And maybe you saw this too. Let's show the fact of what happened at a school when a teacher who has been indoctrinated into this idea of American history exceptionalism above all things got angry when a child wouldn't stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, possibly because this child understood that the Pledge of Allegiance has some problems and how America runs its free thought.
I'll defend my country for period. Then go back to where you're from, Mexico or Guatemala or and you want to stand up for the flag.
So
you won't stand up for the flag. You won't stand up. I'm a veteran. I served over 20 years in the military. I love my flag. I salute it. I salute it for its honesty. I salute it because I understand that it has its problems. But I believe in something that Dr. King believed. America made a promise. And that promise wasn't necessarily inspired by man. When Thomas Jefferson said that all men are born with inalienable rights, that God has given us these rights, he spoke of something higher than himself. He spoke of something that was not Thomas Jefferson's idea of liberty, obviously, because he had slaves and he had children that he had created with a slave under his ownership. But he still wrote those words. The idea of liberty in this country has a value. It is the reason why African American and people of color go serve in our military and fight on all areas of the world for the idea of what America could and should be. But his idea is not about that America that encompasses all those people. Because what did he tell that child? He said, where are you from? Guatemala, Mexico, you're not going to stand up for this flag. A teacher who should have the understanding and the knowledge to know what America has done to people of color. Should know the real reasons and workings behind the Alamo. You know, remember the Alamo? At which white settlers went down to what was owned by Mexico under one guise, under one reason, to keep slaves. To keep slaves. And then got angry because they came down there, more of them came than was actually allotted to them. And when told to leave because Mexico had abolished slavery, they rebelled, they fought. See, when we don't teach our history correctly, when we ignore it, when we lie about it, we get this. We get teachers in a school telling people of color, you will bow. But wait a minute, teacher. This is the reason why I don't want to do it. No, I defend my country. You defend it for what? What are you defending when you oppress someone? What are you defending when you tell a young child that they don't have the right to express their understanding? When you can't have a discussion with them that is not biased, so you can have a better understanding of why they feel the way they feel. When you tell them that groups like Black Lives Matter, and let me tell you something, because there are Black people out who really don't like Black Lives Matter. They say, well, Black Lives Matter does not concern with Black lives that are actually in our communities. And ignore the fact of the churches and advocate groups that are there on the ground trying to help people in our community, who ignore programs like this that try to educate for free our community. I chose Erudition as the name for my network solely because I prayed, and God gave me the name. And I told you all last week, to be erudite, that means a person must dedicate time, thought, understanding to a subject. That's what it means. And so erudition means that you're dedicating yourself to do better, to learn more. The Latin word erudere means to teach, simply to teach, to provide knowledge. And the error in it goes against the rudis in it, because erudere is a word that is derived from rudis. And rudis is the word, the Latin word, that means rude, raw, unskilled, uneducated, ignorant, foolish, useless. And so I get on here, and my wife gets on Monday to provide some form of erudition for you. Some training, some teaching that will help you not to be unskilled, raw. So that when you deal with people like what we've seen twice on here, you know how to deal with that. You can speak intelligently to it. And you can grow. Please talk in a simpler term, because some words I don't understand, and we're also trying to get all ages to know. So what word don't you understand, Matthew? Earl, boy, my friend, good to see you. It's hard to help the unwilling, especially if they don't read and research for themselves. It is very hard, my brother. It really is. I thank you so much for watching. But we also have to hold them to an accountability. One thing that I learned from reading about Carter G. Woodson, right, and the idea of fugitive pedagogy, teaching what others don't want you to teach. And we're still there. We're still there. People would tell Dr. Woodson, well, why is this even important? And he spent his life teaching, fighting sometimes with the very people in his own culture, because he understood the importance of the research and the study and the passing on of knowledge. He understood that what we have to do is to push beyond those, as you said, Earl, the unwilling, those who just don't want to hear, those who don't see any money, wealth, and knowing the truth, as we saw at the beginning of the program. Those who say to themselves that if I don't do, if I could keep this quiet, folks won't know. If you control the narrative, you control the people. And right now, they are controlling the narrative. They're controlling the people. Matthew, I am a little sad in the way that slavery is still happening. Discrimination is still happening. Yes, it is. And Matt, let me tell you, the only way to learn things is to be exposed to things, is to willingly allow yourself to expose yourself to things. So my son posted in here a moment ago that we just talk in simpler terms so that because he didn't understand it. And so when, as a parent, when I see that, I ask, well, what is it that you don't understand? And then I go sit with him, or my wife sits with him, and we learn this thing. So now he has that. He has that wealth of knowledge that he can take further on in his life confidently. Too many of us will not do what Matthew just did. Simply say, I don't get what you're saying. Can you make it a little bit clear to me? And Maddie, if you're talking about the word erudite means knowledge, to teach, to learn. That's what it means. And you can add that word to your vocabulary. You know, I want to share one last thing here. One last thing on here, because I ran across this too. And you know, you all know, if you know me, I love talking about history. And tonight we've talked about some, but I really wanted you to see what is the purpose as we're getting back to doing the shows and getting back on Erudition. You know, it's almost as if you got to engage with your audience. Like you got to really try to push to recruit people to try to understand a little bit better. It's like starting over at ground zero. It's the reason why we don't really ever, no matter what me and Tina are doing, we don't really like to miss a show. Because it's important. And somebody may need whatever is being taught or offered. But I'm going to share one more thing with you all, because this came up. And I think this actual video is old, and I may actually play the entire thing because I want you to really understand the war that's being waged here, right? I really want you to get it, because if you don't get it and you don't understand that we are in a war, and as Earl said, that they're controlling a narrative, oh man, your kids are going to be in a bad place. But here's an interview that was done with, oh yeah, our friend Rudy Giuliani. And he sat on this interview with Trump's other boy here, and they talked about Columbus. Now, if you know me, I really get into Columbus, right? But here's what they're doing. And I want you to understand this because it's so to the point. Here we go.
He basically proved the world was round, correct?
Correct, but I mean, people were executed for that. People were canceled for that. He was canceled for that at many of the courts, and finally the court of Portugal allowed him to do it. So those are all achievements. We can't take those away. Did he engage in some immoral acts himself? Did he allow his crew to do it? There seems to be evidence that he did, but we don't know that for sure. It's hundreds of years ago. Did he do anything that other men and women of his age would have done? No. And have all of our other heroes done that? I mean, John F. Kennedy. Now, it's a different age, but now we know things about John F. Kennedy that make him considerably less than perfect. But the Democrats idolize him. Or FDR, when he turned down the ship of Jewish people who were trying to flee the Nazis. Or I can find every single one of their heroes on the left and on the right, and I can
why?
That's outright lunacy. It's outright lunacy. And here's the thing. So I watched that, and I said to myself, wow, this is what we're doing. This is what we're teaching. This is the bull that people believe out here. But they do believe it, ladies and gentlemen. They believe it because how many of you all, let me ask this question out of the few that I got on the interactive tonight. There are about 8 people on here right now. Let me ask you a question. Did Columbus travel to the Americas because he thought that the world was flat? Tell me if you were taught that at school. If you were taught that at school, just simply say, yes, I was, or yes. Type yes in, and if you were taught that in school. I'll give you a moment. Matthew says no. He wasn't taught that that's what it was. Anybody else? So, majority of you all out here are saying that Columbus, that you didn't get taught in school, that Columbus came to the Americas because the world was round. Then why is Rudy Giuliani and others, because it's not just him, the flat earthers and all these other people, why are they spewing that crap? Why is that something that is still being said? Why are we still talking about this as if this was really a part of the age of exploration? You know why? Because they're still being told that in their homes. They're still being told that in some other places. These lies have a history. And he quickly was like, yes. Then he says, oh, well, maybe he did atrocities. There's no maybe to it. Columbus, he wrote down everything. He wrote down the first time he met the indigenous people. He wrote down and said, hey, you know what? These people are so nice that we can conquer them. And another part of what I didn't show you that Giuliani said, he went in and talked about how Columbus went and saved the savages from themselves. Savages. This from a man who went and cut noses and ears and lips off of people because they didn't keep up with their gold quota. And how do we know this? Because Columbus and his people wrote it down. They massacred the Taino people so badly that within 100 years they did not exist. But we got people sitting on television teaching lies. Lies that they were not necessarily taught in school, but they were taught by other people. It's disgusting. Then he talked about how, it was okay because he went over to the Spain and Portugal. He slipped with the Portugal. Which made me think to myself, Rudy knows a little bit, but he's choosing to teach the lie, to regurgitate the lie. It's sad. It's disgusting. It's bad. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there that believe it. People can't even tell you what Columbus is from anymore because they don't know. Because they've tried to suppress and lie so much. When it's pretty obvious if you listen to that man and you read his works, his writing. Oh, Tyson, good to see you, my brother. A lot of education is still rooted in white supremacy, and the people in power are trying to get back to the good old days. And the people today believe that they deserve the privileges that their ancestors had. That is truth. And they sit here and they get mad and they say to you, you're replacing me. You're taking away my history. You're overriding my history and forgetting that for the better part of 1,000 years, you have rewritten everyone else's history and gave it a European or white narrative. That you've ignored where life comes from. That you've allowed your pseudo-historians and archaeologists to ignore the writings of Herodotus, of Plato. You've ignored all of those things from Timbuktu. You've ignored the documents and things that were found in Egypt. You have ignored all of this because it did not follow your narrative. That you brought knowledge. When we talk about migrations in this country, we often talk about the Great Black Migration that took blacks from the South to the North. But we forget one major migration that happened that changed everything in history. And that is the diaspora of blacks, people of color, dark-skinned people leaving Africa to travel all over the world and ignoring that genetic fact. A fact. I watched a physicist recently sit on a program and talk about Asians and indigenous Americans. And he talked about how they share a similar trait with the way they deal with alcohol. And I laughed. Because what he was actually trying to explain to this person also was that we know migration happened because there is biological proof of why it happened. Not just the sun, the processing of certain things. It's been proven that certain animal milks whites could not digest that were in Africa. And that, yes, the sun was harsh on them. And so when those people with that genetic mutation realized this was not the most opportune place for them to be, they migrated to where they could live with others who shared that same mutation. That's the science behind it. But we've lied for so long in our understanding of history and our marking down of his story, that we have functionally created this whole fictitious history, like Rudy Giuliani was talking about, that doesn't even apply to anybody. And nobody in here could say that they learned it. But he did. And then the other guy, Bannon, he co-signed it because that's what they're learning. Maddie, they rewrite your history and then they tell you the lies and you don't even know if it's true. That's why I'm sad whenever I don't go get Black history at my school. More than often, I hear from my sons, I'll sit and I'll listen to some lessons, and history is so cloaked. Lies are put out, fallacies. And I spend so much of my time going, man, what do I teach? What do I teach? Because I can start anywhere. The Columbus lie was started by an English writer. That the idea of the world not being round was a lie. They already knew it was round. Navigators had already plotted areas of the world. Columbus had the PRS map. But we lie. Tyson. The winners get to write the history. Books and writing would be destroyed when the country was conquered. We are here today in America with states in the South and in 2022 still book burning, trying to keep knowledge away from their constituents. In Alabama, even adults can't take courses on critical race theory. Yes, we're hiding history. As we get ready to close down from this hour, I got a challenge for you. If you watch this program later, I got a challenge for you. I want you, by next week, to go find in your state where you're from, I want you to go and find something that happened within your state, something in Black history that happened within your state, in your city. Could be anything. And I want you to share it. I want you to share it in the chat. Drop it in the chat for us, right? And we'll look at it. And we'll talk about it. We'll cover it. Because I want this to be interactive for you. I want you to get some knowledge from this. I think this last hour, see, Matthew said something else here. Let me put this up here. Some stuff I don't know about Black history. And that's why I go on this program. But that's mainly why I don't talk as much. That's fine. That's it. Sometimes knowledge learning is just that, listening. Right? And I understand that. And I'm sure there are people who watch, listen, and maybe don't comment as much. But we got to do something. We got to do something. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an hour, about a minute or two over, but I do appreciate, I saw Tyson, I saw Earl in here. I do appreciate you all connecting with us and getting involved. I may, for about a week or so, maybe about the next 2 weeks, keep it very simplistic like I'm doing right now, because I want us to be able to do these programs without any technical issues that we were having before. No, anytime. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate you being on. Because I just think it's important. But all right, I'm gonna let you go until next time. We'll be here on the interactive, ready to provide knowledge and understanding. Please, 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 please look into the history within your town, your area. Teach it to your kids, and share it with us. And learn something that you might not have known about where you live in the country. All right. Until next week, you have a blessed and great weekend, and we will be seeing you later. Thank you.